Alright guys, what's up? So here's another installment of I'm gonna find Bigfoot for you. Um, I'm kind of gonna travel the whole US and find locations that I believe the Sasquatch are known to um, sort of be, or I'm trying to get away from sighting reports. The reason I say that is because I'm trying to be like unbiased here. I'm just trying to find the areas that I believe, using my criteria, that the Bigfoot would travel through. And sightings, they do help, but it becomes a mismatch. It's just like um, they're all over the gamut. So I'm trying to do this from a different standpoint. So the other day you could see I did the Bluff Creek installment here, and what the situation was and where I believed they would move to and why. Now, as you look at this zoomed out map here, I've got a couple place marks up here. In my honest opinion, they move north to south more often than east to west. And if we just take a look at the terrain here and the topography, you've got this whole heavily forested section all the way up through, from Bluff Creek, where a majority of sightings are, through Oregon into Yakima, but we've got like Mount Hood here. So this was today's installment about Mount Hood. Let me just zoom into it here. All right, now I haven't looked up where the sightings were or anything. I'm just doing this based on my research and what I have learned from them. I highly doubt they're living in the top of Mount Hood section here. That's definitely not a place to hold up. It's going to be harsh winters. Vegetation probably won't be that good. Other animal life and activity probably come down to the flats. Now that's not to say that you won't catch one crossing, Mount Hood and coming off on the east side over here. The east side, I believe, is probably the side that they're not going to come that side too much. The southeast, east. When you zoom out here, if I wanted a safe spot to hang out, if I'm a Sasquatch and I want to go to another, area where there's less habitable, situations, people aren't living there and coming there and skiing and doing everything, hiking, yada yada yada, I would look for an area sort of to the northwest of Mount Hood. So in my honest opinion, or professional opinion, just from learning these creatures, I would have to say that the northwest area here, that I'm zooming into, is a great area for them to just hang out, to live, to do their thing. You've got some trails on the east side, you've got some trails on the north, but this area in particular, to me, was of great value for one main reason. And that reason is, so when I back out a little bit here, you can take a look at some of the places where I have placed these markers already. And why did I place these markers in these locations? So if I'm a Sasquatch and I'm probably predominantly going to hang out in this northwest corridor from Mount Hood, I may travel back and forth across. I don't know if that's actually a highway, or if that's just cut out for like the pipeline, or if that's a river right here. So they can definitely travel back and forth, almost a north to south to Mount Hood. It would be northwest to southeast technically, because I said the way the terrain is laid out up through the Pacific Northwest, it's more of a northwest or north-south movement in my opinion. So if they are predominantly hanging out in this area here northwest of Mount Hood, and they have to, let's say, move south to Ripplebrook here, or to the Mount Hood National Forest, or if they're going to make their way all the way down through all these other national forests here, all the way down. I mean, technically you could go all the way to Bluff Creek, because it kind of, the terrain and topography kind of pinch down near Bluff Creek here. You've got a whole coastline, which they are reported on the coastline too, but this area right in here, kind of near Grants Pass, would also be, I didn't even look at this, but this would also be another terrain feature that I would definitely be interested in saying, hey, this is an area where you should look at. They could possibly be coming through here. So anyway, back to Mount Hood. Now we really want to narrow this down. So what do we do? So if they have to travel north to south, right? That let's just call it that. Let's shrink our research down and say we're going to move north to south here. You have two sections of highway. This would be just east of Marmont. There's a stretch here. It says Northwood Septic and Service. So there's businesses down through here and etc. And there's also businesses down to the right near Sandy Ridge Trail System on the east. But there's right here where these two pins are. There's a mile stretch between these two pins here of wilderness. You know, where they could come really off the Sandy River right out of the northern section here. You know, and this section here seems to be bigger itself than Mount Hood. You could probably fit 2 or 3 Mount Hoods over here in the northwest. So to me, that's where they'd hang out. And if they have to get north-south, this section of highway, this is how you kind of shrink down everything. And people say, well, you know, why would you do that? Well, along this section, it's going to be desolate. So could you come into this area, you know, few hundred yards and put up a camera system or near this trail? I would. I would bank on that. I'm gonna break this down to say that this section here and this section down here from what is that, Rodentron? I don't even know what that is, or that city. But from there, you got another mile stretch before you get to like Camp Creek Campground, where it's all desolate. Yeah, you have some hiking trails and whatnot, but there's not a huge population here or over, you know, toward the northwest section where you would say, hey, they're going to travel north to south. So in my opinion, if somebody took these two small areas and took the next step and said, hey, I'm going to go look for some trails, I'm going to ride the road for that mile, I'm going to just walk it back and forth, I'm going to see if there's a known game trail, I'm going to see what's going on, you know, within a half mile of the road, I'm going to look for possible markers or structures that these creatures possibly make, and you're shrinking all this area down. This thousands and thousands of acres, you're finding a pinch point, a funnel point where they will cross. And as I mentioned before in the last video, what do we have here? We've got these highways. We've got the 26 and the 35 that merge together down actually south of Mount Hood. To me, they don't come down to these regions. They don't cross these regions, and that's the same thing, you know, in the Bluff Creek area. I call it the V. I'll go ahead and take you down there and show you. Okay, again, so we have 96 and 169 where they come together. This to them is danger. It's just common sense. They understand that people can come from multiple directions to enter this section of woods. And I feel every time I see roads that kind of come together like that and form your Y or your V, stay away from them, because it does nothing for the cause. They know better. They're too smart. All right, so back to Mount Hood. So now, if you really see this large area up here northwest of Mount Hood, it's remote. If they travel south and they're going to come down through the Mount Hood National Forest, which we know that there's been sightings, look at the terrain and topography and how dense that is, and how much, you know, there's no population. You know what I mean? You've got hiker trails and you've got small towns, Ripplebrook, and it's desolate compared to, you know, heavy populated areas. They can traverse this whole section. You know, they're going to have to cross some highways here and there. I understand that. I get that. But I'm looking for these pinch points that I can put together and say, hey, narrow your search down to right here. And then, you know, you could put up a camera, leave a camera for maybe a year, run it straight and see what happens, or a few cameras along that mile stretch, because these points here, they're going to pay off. It's just a no-brainer. When it's a funnel access. They're not going to cross near Sandy and Kelsall and Happy Valley, and you got some big cities out this way. You see what I'm saying? Government Island. They're going to stay away from that. They're going to shy away from that. Mount Hood is vast, yes, but like I said again, every time I've noticed this Y or this where the roads come together, 35, 26 in this section here, I usually find that they're not crossing in these small areas like the government camp area. I may be wrong. It's not to say that they're not going to. What I'm trying to say is that this area is probably a better area between these two pins, or a better area to cross between these two pins. Just based on some of the things that I put together. And if anybody's in the Mount Hood area and they want to get out there and just get a half mile off the road and look for the things that I told you, and go to these two specific places, which you can put this all together where the drop pins are, I guarantee you will have some type of interaction, a photo, an encounter. Something will happen in these regions, because if you can find out what time of the year they're using it, you're going to be there before they come through on their normal pattern. So in this series, basically, I'm just going to try to go all over the United States and try to find these pinch points and use other maps. That way you can, help the research. It's helping me, it's helping everybody to narrow down the search. And here, if you don't believe me, we can go to ARC GIS. It's just a map that's put together of sightings and situations. So what did I say before? They're moving north to south. Am I correct? Well, look at the hotspot sightings. Up here, north. They're moving more south down through California. You don't see much in Nevada, and where they branch off is up in this region here near Idaho, kind of where they do make their east-west travels. But the majority, I think, that's going on out there, if they're traveling far distances, is north-south, Washington, Oregon, California. So I'm actually putting points on the map where you can go and find out what is happening. And everybody says, well, yeah, you think this or you think that. And I'm actually putting the points on the map where I believe people should go check out, run 3, 4, 5, 6 trail cameras, for a period of time. Don't abuse the area. Don't go there every day. No. You're going to put them up discreetly, do some things, and you're going to stay out of there. Maybe check them every 3 months. Let it go, and then change your batteries and go that route. So this will conclude the Mount Hood Bigfoot travels, hopefully, or whatever you want to call it. But like I said, my goal is to put the pins on the map where I believe. And you're going to ask me, well, why do you believe that? Well, there's a whole slew of things that I've put together, and it's just not sightings. I really could care less about sightings. I do factor it in, but nobody holds them credible anymore anyway. You could have 10,000 sightings and nobody believes it. They're just logged in a database. Some of them are good to use, but what I'm doing is using historic criteria and where I think they would be. So we know this could be a hot spot, but it's hundreds of miles. So I've narrowed down your hundreds of miles to 2 1-mile sections coming across the 26. And I think that's where you should put and invest some time. Half mile in the woods, nothing crazy. You can go north or south, of 26. I would say if I'm going to put cameras, I'm going to focus right here. I'm going to put them on the south side, because there's too much terrain where they can come from this upper section down into there. I want to get closer to that funnel, by Sandy River as much as possible. Right through here, they can cross this with ease. Nobody sees them. They're gone. They're long gone. So that's where I would focus. Down on the southern southeast section, you have some trails that come off of Mount Hood. So I would have to try to find a spot on Mount Hood and say this is where they're possibly hanging out. It's desolate. There's really not a lot of trails. So you got Devil's Meadow here, right? There's a campsite. I didn't zoom in. I'm not doing all that, but if there's you coming down through these ravines and areas, this would be a good spot down through here for them to exit. If they're coming from, the northern side, where it kind of looks really heavily forested here from, Zigzag Mountain. I'm gonna guess they probably hang out in this region here. There's not a lot of hiking going on there. It seems like there's quite a few crevices, hills, jut outs, everything like that. So to me, it's nothing for them to, come out of that section, come down through, where I've got my 2 pins, and then they basically got it home free. Mount Hood, they're all I can guarantee they're back and forth through there. So there's 2 sections of highways of the 26 that I gave you. I would check those out. If you're in the Mount Hood area, get back to me. I can help you do some other things. Now I'm saying I'm not the end all be all, but what I'm trying to do is put us on the right track. And if we can start doing this in multiple locations, it's just going to advance the research.